Hello and welcome aboard everybody, Plasma 1945 with the question of will it run DCS? And the question is the 1060 6GB video card. This was an entry-level video card back in around 2016, so almost 8 years ago. And you're seeing the FPS here with DCS World Bomber Intercept Mission at high presets, and the only change I made is I went from 4x anti-aliasing to 2. But as you can tell here, the shadows, the textures, and everything else look absolutely phenomenal. So let's look at the FPS. As we're flying here, we're looking at 64, 65 FPS. OBS is running in the background and actually capturing this footage. So that's also costing the processor and the video card because that's how we're encoding. And in the cockpit, looking around, well, pretty stable at around 55 to just over 60 FPS. And remember, this is at high preset. So if you wanted to, you could dial down the graphics a bit by removing shadows. Probably you would want to also decrease the textures if you have this video card. Right now the textures are set to high for terrain and high for the airplanes. But because this video card only comes with 6 GB of video memory, I would say lowering the textures would definitely be a good idea. Now, this would be a mandatory thing for an aircraft such as a Tomcat or an F-16 or the F-4. There you go, there's a couple of missiles going out on the AI F-5 jets that are heading for me. This is sort of my go-to test area for this game. Now you're wondering maybe why I'm testing this out. Well, people ask me about will it run DCS for older computers, and actually this video card is one that I gave to my friend on his Intel 4th gen i7 computer. Subsequently, we actually upgraded his motherboard, CPU, and RAM for about $450, $500 Canadian. So that's about $400 US. And as you can see on the 11600 processor with 16 gigs of RAM, the game is running quite comfortably and stable at 1080p at high settings, just around 60 FPS, sometimes a bit higher. If you've got a family member who wants to play DCS, or if you're somebody starting out, if you can get a video card for $90 and match out this configuration, you're going to be pretty comfortable flying around in Caucasus map on the FC3 plane, so that's SU-25, SU-27, F-15s, A-10A, and you'll have pretty decent FPS in single player. Once you go to multiplayer, you'll definitely need to lower your textures down from high to medium, but the game will still definitely be playable. You can also turn down the shadows to get a little bit more FPS. But I found that in an airplane that is very detailed, like the Tomcat or the F-4, the internal textures of the cockpit do eat up quite a bit of game performance. So keep that in mind. But for those who might have a computer kicking around, upgrade the CPU, the RAM. You can still use the 1060 and definitely be able to fly around in DCS World. Alright, so now that my primary and secondary airplane have been splashed by the F5s, and I've been thoroughly humiliated for flying with a keyboard and mouse, let's talk about the build. So he's got an i5 11600K, and as you can see here, it was boosting to just over 4.7 gigs. The RAM was the biggest limitation. 16 gigs is not enough. Get that up to 32 gigabytes if you're going to build out a DCS computer. It definitely needs that extra memory. The GeForce, 6 gigs, it's enough, but again, if you get into more complex servers with more airplane types or a more complex cockpit, you'll have to change your resolution either down or change your textures. So this computer was built in 2022, and this was the upgrade, right? So he kept the same power supply, he got my video card, but overall, I would say just around $500 Canadian was the whole upgrade. And the most important thing is he kept his power supply, kept his hard drive, everything else. Now, let's talk about the equivalent. The current equivalent of that 11600K is a 1440. That's the 14th gen. There's also a 13th gen you might be able to get cheaper. And it's worth around $300 or so. So the price is pretty close. The next question is the motherboard. You can get one on DDR4 or DDR5 motherboard. I would say get a DDR5 so you've got the ability to expand and use faster memory. And about $100 for your RAM is what you need for 32 gigs. Something to keep in mind if you're doing this upgrade. The video card, as I said, the video memory is going to be a limitation. But also the 13th and 14th gen motherboards are at their end. Which means that when Intel puts out their 15th gen motherboards and 15th gen CPUs, those are going to be completely different sockets. So, if you can get a good deal on a 13400, 13500, or 14400, 14500 version of the CPU with a motherboard, and this is a second computer for your family, for kids. If you've got an Intel 8th gen or 9th gen rig and you want to just slap in a bit of extra power, going up to the 14400 is a significant upgrade. So that's all I have. Plasma 1945 is out of here.